And speaking of the Lakers, let's get into their free agent targets. And look, it kind of begins and ends with the 2 max slots that they have. The Lakers have a lot of cap space next year because if my memory is correct, I believe Luol Deng finally comes off the cap this year after getting paid $20 million a year to play in 1 game a season for the past 2 years. You do you, Luol Deng. You're living the best life. But their number 1 target is obviously LeBron James, the top free agent in the history of sports again. And again, the real question, does he want to win titles or does he want to win the East? I think he could win a title with the Los Angeles Lakers if all the pieces fall correctly. But it's just, does LeBron want to go to Los Angeles and leave the East? Because you're talking about a guy who has had, this is an unprecedented level of dominance over a conference. Michael Jordan never did this to the Eastern Conference. Hakeem Olajuwon never did this to the West. Even the Spurs didn't do this to the Western Conference where they made it to the finals so many times. It just was just overall the most dominant player or team in that conference. We've never seen anything like this in the history of the NBA. So for LeBron, is it titles or is it winning the East over and over and over again and going down as probably the greatest player to grace Eastern Conference besides Jordan? But again, I'm not getting into that.
I still believe that LeBron's best chance to make it to the final, which is his goal each and every year, make it there and then win, is still the Eastern Conference. That's the easiest path right now.
It is. And I think if you also look at the projected lineup with LeBron James, mind you, any Lakers fan that's watching, yes, Paul George, I do believe, is going to the Lakers. So every projected lineup that I have does include Paul George because Paul George is going to go to the Lakers. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But this lineup is so good. Lonzo plus LeBron and Paul George, Kuzma, Julius Randle. Kyle Kuzma is a mini Kevin Love. He is who Kevin Love should have been when he went to the Cavs. Just a guy who can shoot from the outside, play decent defense down low. Kuzma plus LeBron is a really fun combo. And then Lonzo Ball is the point guard that LeBron has always wanted. I still think that Lonzo Ball is going to end up being Rajon Rondo. I don't see him ending up.
It's not an insult, by the way.
No, it's not. I love Rajon. Rajon Rondo has had a double-digit year career in the NBA and has also won a title. So I don't really know why that's a bad comp. But I still think that LeBron going to the Lakers would be such a good pick. But the real question is, who should they bring along with LeBron?
Well, the best pairing is Paul George.
It is, well,
that's the best pairing.
Another thing we talked about on the camp show yesterday when we talked about best teammates was, is Paul George the best possible teammate for LeBron James? I care to disagree. I think Paul George is a little bit of an iffy teammate for LeBron in terms of what he brings you and his ability to make his own shot off the dribble. I think Paul George is a great catch-and-shoot guy. I think his defense is a little bit too predicated on who's around him. But for me, Chris Paul, if you can. If it's possible. I don't know how. I know it's going to stunt Lonzo Ball's growth, but if you can get Chris Paul and LeBron James on the court at the same time, you do it. It is the greatest crime in NBA history that we have not seen Chris Paul and LeBron James on the court at the same time. They're best friends. They have great chemistry in all their little pickup games. And also, it's Chris Paul and LeBron James. It would be so amazing.
Well, we're going to talk about both these guys here as well, plus DeMarcus Cousins in a little bit. All 4 of these guys, hint, hint, we're going to discuss.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get to our next guy, Paul George. Look, I
talked about him a lot.
I think he's going to go to the Lakers.
We've talked about
this is what he wants.
We've talked about him so much going to the Lakers. At this point, it's literally when.
I am sorry, Oklahoma City Thunder.
I'm sorry. You're losing Paul George. He's going to go to the Lakers. Their lineup with him in there is fantastic, and they still have another max slot to go along with it. Lonzo, Paul George, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Julius Randle. Is it a playoff team next year? Maybe. Because the West is going to be amazing next year.
Yes, it is.
Oh, absolutely. In the East, it's like a 5 seed. The West, it's like barely an 8 seed. The Nuggets are coming back next year with a full, healthy Paul Millsap. A lot of the bottom tier teams in the West, or bottom playoff teams, in terms of Minnesota, obviously they're going to be more healthy next year. So we'll see what ends up happening with the Lakers next year in terms of making the playoffs. But with Paul George out there, that's a good lineup.
Let's get to a big man then, who I think is going to be great with the Wizards if he goes there. Boogie Cousins.
Really, the question is, do you want to give him the max if you're a team that isn't the Pelicans?
In theory, assuming you keep Julius Randle, you can put Randle at the 4, which I think is a more natural spot.
Well, if you get DeMarcus Cousins, you let Randle walk, and you probably let someone sign him in restricted free agency, and then you draft someone in the later half of the draft. Because they still have a first-round draft pick. It's just way later in the back end of the first round. But with the Lakers, if they get DeMarcus Cousins, you have to worry about what that does to Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma. Because as we've seen a lot with DeMarcus Cousins, he is a black hole of offense. That can be good sometimes that can be bad. But for Ingram and Kuzma, it is going to be bad. I love Boogie. I think that Boogie can be the best player on a team and bring you to the playoffs, unlike the Kings, who just don't even get me started.
It does not count.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm worried, do you want to stunt Kyle Kuzma's growth with his offensive output down low? And do you want to stop Brandon Ingram from getting 20 points a game? There's no way that they can sign Paul George and DeMarcus Cousins and also make sure that Brandon Ingram's overall point output doesn't decrease significantly. So Cousins is a little bit of a shaky one for me. I still think he stays with the Pelicans.
All right, another player here, Chris Paul, who, as we mentioned earlier on a previous show, Harris, should have already been on the
He should have been on the Lakers.
It should have happened.
Curse you, David Stern, keeping Chris Paul away from the Lakers and sending him to the Clippers. Sorry, Elena. Chris Paul should never have ended up on the Clippers, and it was a crime that he did. Chris Paul should have ended up on the Lakers with Dwight Howard, and if that ended up happening, we would have a much different fabric of the NBA. If that happened, Steve Nash never goes to the Lakers. Kobe maybe gets a couple more prime years out of his career. And the Lakers, by the way, they win another title. And now it's a little bit late, but this is still a really good team. Chris Paul plus Paul George plus the rest of those guys, their offensive output would increase significantly.
It does hurt Lonzo's growth.
It does. It completely stunts Lonzo's growth because you keep Chris Paul, he's your starting point guard for the next 3 seasons. And all of a sudden, Lonzo Ball probably gets traded.
Your sixth man.
So we'll see what ends up.
Maybe he's your sixth man instead.
Yes, exactly.
I would imagine some
But I'll say this much: if Lonzo Ball is your sixth man, not great. Lonzo Ball is not a good sixth man off the bench. Would you rather have Rajon Rondo as a sixth man, or would you rather have? Well, at this point, do you maybe try to get Brandon Ingram as your sixth man and get a small forward? Because you can't have Lonzo Ball scoring points for you off the bench as your sixth man.
I mean, you definitely kind of stack the rotations to get Ingram playing with
you would probably have Lonzo still play 30 minutes a game off the bench. The real question is who isn't playing. You probably do this. You probably go Lonzo Ball, Chris Paul, Paul George, Kuzma, and then a big man center down low because you have a very small lineup there with 2 point guards.
Okay. Get to one more player here, Jabari Parker, who is a restricted free agent. How does this fit here?
This is a backup option if they don't get Paul George. I think Jabari Parker and Paul George bring you very similar things. We saw Jabari Parker the last couple games against the Celtics really up his ante as a defensive player, and I think he could bring that to you on the Lakers. If you don't get Paul George, and I know that the lineup I have has them with Paul George, but if you don't get George, Jabari Parker is a great player to bring in and add to his small ball lineup as a player at the power forward. This would be a really fun combo for them in terms of just what they could bring as an overall playing style. I would like to see Jabari Parker at the four, and we'll get the he's listed as a point guard there. We'll get the power forward graphic fixed to you there in just a second. But look, this is a very modern-day offense in terms of Lonzo Ball, Paul George, Brandon Ingram, Jabari Parker, and Kyle Kuzma. That is a small ball 2018 lineup, but this is also quintessential Luke Walton offense. No big man down low, threes all over the place, a primary distributor in Lonzo Ball, and let everyone else be a shooter. I think that this lineup would actually put up a lot of points. The real question is, can Brandon Ingram take a step defensively with Jabari Parker next to him, and can Jabari reach his full potential as a player on the Lakers?
All right, to recap those free agent targets for Lakers, these are some of their top-tier guys, maybe not the most likely options, but their top options. LeBron, Paul George, Boogie Cousins, Chris Paul, and then Jabari Parker Harris. We think they'll get Paul George. I am not as optimistic about getting LeBron James.
You think they're going to get Paul George. I know they're going to get Paul George, and that's the difference here. I still think that it's going to be Paul George as a Laker, as a shoo-in. The real question for the Lakers, can we get LeBron James?